Good morning. On behalf of the Kingston City School District, the Kingston City School District Board of Education, I want to thank you for participating this morning. We're recording this meeting and we'll post it on the Kingston City School District YouTube channel later today. I have a brief presentation and we'll try to answer questions you submit at the end of the presentation. You can send your questions at any time during this meeting. You don't have to wait to send them. I may not have all of the answers today, but we will follow up when I have more about this evolving situation. Question and answers from our meeting today will be compiled into a running document that will also be posted on our website later this week. As you may know, Governor Cuomo, the State Education Department, and the Department of Health recently released guidelines for the reopening of schools. Although the Kingston City School District has been considering various scenarios, absent these guidelines, the district has not been able to formulate a specific plan. With the release of the recent guidelines, school districts are required to submit a plan by July 31st. Your questions and input are necessary and welcome during these town hall meetings, but there may be some questions that I do not have the answers to at this moment. The State Education Department and Department of Health guidance are lengthy documents with many areas in need of interpretation and clarification. The submission process for our plan consists of a 16-page bulleted list of required aspects of our final plan. We continue to work with the State Education Department, Ulster County Department of Health, and the Ulster County BOCES to get as many clear answers to all of our questions and yours. This is an unprecedented time, and we are striving to do what is best for our students, faculty, staff, and community in a very imperfect situation. Just to start, I'd like to let our people who out there are watching in our community know we have been from the beginning of this pandemic tracking the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus here in Ulster County, as well as within our school district. And the screen you see in front of you right now and the charts in front of you show where we are as of yesterday. As you see, 132 active cases in the entire county. And then we broke it down by our cases within the Kingston City School District attendance areas, which at this point is about 47. So while these numbers are going in the right direction and while they are low, this does not mean we can let our guard down. This actually further emphasizes our need to plan our reopening for our schools in a very careful and deliberate way. The guidance that I spoke of came out of the State Education Department, and I just broke out a few of the highlights from that 146-page document. And basically, we have an occupancy of classrooms and other small spaces cannot exceed 50% of our maximum capacity unless it is designed for use by a single occupant. Masks must be required, including while on the school bus. Daily temperature checks as students and staff enter our buildings. Cleaning and disinfection procedures as per the CDC and the Department of Health. Schools must provide all enrolled students with access to meals each school day, whether the school is in person or remote. And the districts must have a plan for remote learning to ensure technology and internet access is available to all in an equitable manner. As we work through this process, we've been putting together some priorities and our thoughts. Obviously, the number one priority is the health and safety of our students, teachers, and staff. Another priority is complying with the Department of Health and State Education Department requirements for school reopening. We're focusing on improving our online learning programs if they're needed now or later during the school year. We're focused on equity and access to education, whether it be online or in person. We're also focusing on our flexibility, being able to move back and forth between online learning and in-person learning as this situation develops. We're also looking at how we're going to deliver teaching, and our focus starts with our youngest students, our students with disabilities, and our English language learners. Lastly, we've been tasked by the State Education Department to come up with 3 scenarios in our plan. One is in person for all students. The second is remote learning for all students. And the last is a hybrid, with some students in person and some students learning remote. Given the state of our country and our state, we believe the hybrid model is probably where we need to put most of our emphasis. At this time, I'm going to work through questions that are coming up on my screen and do my best to answer. And as I've said before, there are going to be questions today that maybe I can't answer right now, but we're going to continue to follow up with questions, publish them on our website so you can check back. This question comes in. My grandson has asthma, is not capable of wearing masks for any extended period of time. The question is, what are the plans do you have for addressing such situations as children wearing masks for extended periods of time, having a condition which does not allow them to do so safely? That's a pretty common question that I've had when I've spoke to people, including our teachers, our building principals, our other administrators. That's a real issue. Tomorrow or Thursday morning, I have a meeting with the Department of Health, and those are the kind of clarifying things I need. I need to know, what are we going to do with those students who can't wear masks? What are we going to do with students who can't wear them for long periods of time? What are we going to do with our youngest students taking their masks off and those kind of things? And how do we teach wearing a mask as a teacher? So these are all things that we're hoping for some more clarification from our local Department of Health, and we're going to follow their protocols and their lead around that. The next question is, I feel that high school students need to return to school more than the elementary students. High schoolers need to be ready for college. Is there talk about having our 9 through 12 return to school in September? I'd say right now everything is on the table in our planning. As I said earlier, we've gone through many different scenarios of how we would reopen school. So there is talk of of both options. Right now, like I said, we're really looking at our youngest learners and seeing what their needs are, especially if we're using reopening using technology as an online tool. Really keeping in mind also parental needs for daycare and those kind of things. So like I said, everything's on the table right now, but we're really focused on our youngest students, our students with disabilities, and our English language learners. Many colleges are going to online learning this fall as well. So preparation for college may be appropriate to be more adept at online learning at this time. The next question is, if a student, teacher, or staff member gets COVID-19, what is the response plan? Will the classroom be shut, the school, the district? Another very common question, and another question that I don't have the exact answer for at this time. We are still, I said, on Thursday, I'll be meeting with the Department of Health, and we're hoping to have clarification around the State Department of Health and SED guidelines to what our protocols need to be. Do we need to shut down the classroom? Do we need to shut down the school? So those are questions that we don't have the answers to yet, but they will be a key part of our plan with our safety and wellness for our faculty, staff, and students. So that question will be answered, and hopefully by Thursday. The next question is, will parents be able to opt out of school, in-school learning and just do distance learning? If so, who will be responsible for the daily distance learning assignments and lessons? That is another question that's kind of up in the air right now. The guidance suggests that school districts are responsible for delivering education to all students if they decide to come to school or not come to school. It also later suggests that is only if a student has a pre-existing condition or a disability that puts them at a higher risk. So we are looking at how we would do that. Again, our teachers have done a phenomenal job working online during the fall, or during the spring, I should say. So we are looking at what our resources are to be able to make sure we have a teacher for every student, whether they're home because they have a medical condition, or whether they're coming in, or if they're just on regular remote learning. So our focus, again, as I said before, is equity in education and access for all. So that's a big piece of that. But as far as if students can opt out, we don't have that information right now. But we do know if there are students who have medical conditions that keep them from coming to school, we are responsible for delivering education to them, and we will, bring the resources and faculty and staff to bear to make that happen. This next question is kind of the same. Will there be an option for virtual learning if we don't feel comfortable sending our children to school? And again, I kind of refer back to my last answer. At this time, that hasn't been clarified. Right now, we know that if students have medical conditions or if they have a disability that keeps them from attending school, then we are responsible for their learning. Whether it's an opt-out or an optional model for parents, we don't have that at this point, but we're hoping to get clarification from the State Education Department on that. Next question is, in case one person's schooling, will the district be providing masks to all faculty, staff, and students who do not have one? Yes. The answer to that is yes. We will be providing masks. We are procuring PPE now, masks, hand sanitizer, temperature check, thermometers, so we can do what we need to do according to the guidance. We hope that we don't run into the same situation a lot of people had in March, where the PPE was hard to come by. And if that is the case, that's going to be part of our our response to the State Education Department on whether or not we can or will go to in-person learning. But our feeling right now is, looking at the guidance, social distancing and masks are required to attend school in person. So we're going to do everything we can to keep our students and our faculty safe. And all of the research now and all that we're hearing from the Department of Health, both state and federal, is masks make a big difference. We will be providing masks for students and for staff. Will special permission be granted to children who have already been granted the previous school year? Yes. We're continuing to move forward with our special permissions. Again, that, we still haven't determined exactly what our school year would look like next year and how each building will operate, but we have not revoked any special permission at this time. Would Kingston City School District consider outdoor classrooms to decrease the risk of COVID? There has been some talk about outside classrooms. Again, we looked at it more along the lines of maybe our PE classrooms, not necessarily teaching classrooms outside. I know that actually, some articles were shared with me about it yesterday, and I know there is some history of outside classes in the distance past. I think that's something we'd have to look through with our safety protocols. We have student allergy situations. We have the getting covering for students. Our tents available. We live in the Hudson Valley, where weather is not necessarily conducive to outside learning on a regular basis. So that, on top of safety, and we've spent the last 30 years in education creating safety plans for our schools that really involve things like shelter in place. So we'd have to review all of those and make sure that if we were to do something in the outside, we did have all of our protocols in place and we felt safe. Whether it be from an intruder or something of that nature, or from weather conditions. We do have severe weather in the fall, in the spring, in the summer, and in the winter. So those things are all have to be considerations around outside classrooms. And just to go back to the outside classrooms, one of the other requirements and suggestions from the State Education Department, Department of Health, is to increase our outside airflow into our buildings, whether it be through our current ventilation system or opening windows. We are glad that we've invested the money that we've invested in our facilities over the last 7 or 8 years, where we do have up-to-date modern heating and ventilation systems where we can control the fresh air that comes in and out of the building, and we would be increasing that beyond the the recommendations that are out there now. So we do have the capability of creating that air exchange in all of our buildings that would meet the suggestions of the New York State Department of Health. How does the district plan to educate students on the importance of mask wearing, especially if students come from a household that has not been using masks regularly? Again, one of the requirements of our plan from the State Education Department, and it talked about the 16-page bulleted list of things we have to present to the State Education Department, what our plan would be, not only for wearing masks, but also for hygiene, as far as washing hands, as far as social distancing, and putting in lessons for that. So we're developing those lessons, and we're developing that training for our faculty and staff to be able to deliver those, not just once, but that's going to have to be an ongoing, regular, lesson for our students to continue to be reminded. Also, we have, in alignment with the suggestions from the Department of Health, we have ordered signage, we have ordered floor markers, all those things that we need to have to encourage and promote social distancing and proper etiquette as far as health and safety is concerned around COVID-19. The next question is, are there going to be 2 shifts, AM and PM classrooms? Again, I don't have that answer at this time. We currently have not really looked at having a 2-shift AM, PM, but I know there are some districts that are looking at 2 different waves, so that type of rotation. Our district it's difficult, more difficult than some districts with that, with the size of our district and the number of students who take our district transportation, with more than 135 buses on the road in the morning and the afternoon. The bus driver shortage has not gone away through this process, so creating more runs could be difficult for us, considering the length and the breadth of our transportation program. But we have not ruled that out. But we have also, we really have to take into account the realities of teacher work days, transportation, and those kind of things. What's the student to teacher ratio going to be? Well, I think that's, we right now, what we've done is we've taken a look at every single one of our buildings, every single one of our classrooms, measured the square feet in every one of those classrooms to make sure that we could provide proper social distancing with our students and our teachers. The guidance is 6 feet in every direction for each student. So I would think, really our look is, if we are in person in September, you're probably looking at your teacher to student to teacher ratio being 13 or 14 students at the most to 1, as far as teachers are concerned. Should in-person class occur, what is your plan if student, teacher, janitor, administrator gets sick with COVID-19? Will it be mandatory quarantines for the classroom, school, whole district? I refer back to my last answer to that. We're really looking for some guidance from the Department of Health around that. Obviously, up to this point, if you were exposed, you were quarantined and tested, and but there's been some change in that guidance, and we really want to have some clarification from both the state and the Ulster County Department of Health on how we proceed if a student, teacher, staff member, anyone is diagnosed as being positive for the COVID-19 virus. But that is also a requirement in our plan, that we have something in place that will deal with that in each of our school buildings if it occurs. So that's something that we have to have, and will be shared with, obviously, our community as soon as we have that clarification from the Department of Health. Will there be virtual option available to families in the fall? If not, will the district provide any guidance for families who will then choose to homeschool? Again, going back to this similar question from earlier, we are going to look, our focus is on a hybrid model. So to say that there would be some virtual schooling going on at some or multiple levels I would say is a guarantee. I don't see the district coming back with 6,500 students re-entering our buildings in September. So I do see, following the guidance, that's just not possible following the guidance unless we were to acquire 7 or 8 new buildings. So I would say, a virtual option is definitely going to be something that's out there. Is it going to be able to pick and choose? I think that's the question. We do not have guidance on that. And again, if a student has a medical condition or a disability that requires them to stay home because of COVID-19, our job and our requirement from the state education department is to provide education. But for a student who just chooses not to, we don't have clarification on that part of the guidance. As far as homeschooling is concerned, we do have a homeschool director here. If people decide to homeschool, that could work with any parent who decided they were going to decide to school their student themselves at home. Will you require that teachers who are at risk because of their age, have an underlying illness, or have a high risk family member go back to the classroom if they don't feel comfortable? Again, that's something that's in the guidance as far as if we have a teacher who has a medical condition or a disability that makes them more susceptible to COVID-19. If they have a compromised immune system that is documented, then we will not be forcing people to come back to work in those conditions. Obviously, that's something that we will then work with those individuals to find things for them to contribute. Obviously, in this situation, we're going to need every single person who works in the Kingston City School District to contribute in order for us to deliver students what they need moving forward. Our school reopening plans being made with immediate involvement of the teachers union? Yes. I've met with the president of the teachers union, and I'll be meeting with the KTF again this week, and probably every week, maybe multiple times a week between now and September. The one thing that is that this plan, these requirements or the guidance from the State Education Department does say is we can make adjustments and changes with our plan as we see needed. So working together and having the members of the Kingston Teachers Federation help us troubleshoot areas where maybe this doesn't work for teachers, or maybe there's a better idea or a different way of doing things, is a very important part of what we do. The collaboration between our teachers union, our administrators union, our CSEA union, all of those, and our ESP union, which is our clerical staff. All of those groups need to contribute, and we're soliciting information from them, and we'll do so. Again, the plan is due on the 31st, but we can make adjustments between now and whenever we feel we need to make adjustments. So continuing conversation, continuing to get critique and to poke at what we're doing to find better ways to do things. Having everyone involved in that conversation is important. So we will continue to work not only with our teachers, but all our other bargaining units as well. When will the final plan be made public? The requirement under the state guidance is on the 31st. We must submit it to the State Education Department, and we must post it on our website. I won't wait until the 31st to communicate with our community of what our plans are. We're hoping to get these things together prior, obviously, to the 31st, and communicate them to our Board of Education and to our community, so people can start to plan. Now, the other side of that is we do know that between August 1st and August 7th, the governor will be making his announcement as to whether or not we are whether or not schools are actually going to reopen. So we're putting together our plans as if we're going to reopen in some way, in some form. But between the 1st and 7th of August, the governor could change that decision and put us all on full remote, which we're planning for. Or full in person, which we're planning for. I highly doubt that will be where we are, but that we are planning for that as well. So our plan will be submitted on our website on the 31st, but our plan will be presented to our community and to our Board of Education prior to that. If I keep my son out of kindergarten, can he go straight to first grade in the fall of 2021? That question, that's a good question, but right now, kindergarten, given the age and ability of the student, I think going to first grade isn't something that has not been done in the past. So I don't think that's necessarily even a COVID question as much as just a general an education question. But I can respond to that in more depth when we post the answers. I see teaching of our youngest students is important. Does that include pre-K? Yes, that does include pre-K. So our pre-K center here at Mahar is part of our plan. Our pre-K is at George Washington, part of our plan, and continuing to cooperate with our community-based organizations that have pre-K outside in the private preschools is also part of our plan. So we want to continue our pre-K programs. Obviously, I think everyone knows we find this to be one of the tent poles of our program here in Kingston City School District, and we are making them part of our plan as far as bringing them back to school. How can existing after-school programs help plan for reopening serving students in the fall? I think that's a question for an August conversation. I think our focus right now is looking at the school day. What is it going to look like? Who's coming to school? What is our hybrid model looking like? What does our remote plan look like? Then being able to add on the supplemental things that we do with so many of our after-school programs that deliver great programs for our students, and how can we work together with them within the plan that we submit to New York State to continue to bring services and activities to our students. Again, to whoever wrote this in, and if you're part of one of those after-school programs, I encourage you to reach out to us and we can have a deeper conversation. There are many hybrid possibilities. What are some that you are considering? Yeah, there are many hybrid possibilities, and some of the things we're considering. Obviously, there's some school districts that are looking at rotating days. There are some school districts are looking at rotating grade levels. As I said, one of our focus is really how many students, what is the maximum number of students that we can get into our school buildings while staying in compliance with the Department of Health and the State Education Department guidance. So that is really what we're trying to ascertain and make sure that we want to, if we can bring students in the school, we want to bring as many students as we can, obviously in an organized fashion. Starting with, as I said in the beginning, looking at our youngest students, how many elementary students can we get into school, and what's the way we can maximize the number of elementary students we get to school, and then looking at what's our capacity around online learning. How many Chromebooks do we need? What is our student access as far as Wi-Fi is concerned? So when we're looking at that whole picture, so there's several different things being considered. But again, a rotational schedule is confusing for parents, confusing for students, confusing for teachers, and it really doesn't address some of the needs of parents as far as daycare is concerned. So we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. So it's simple, it's organized, parents understand it, students understand it, our faculty and staff understand it, and our community can understand it. So we're really trying to do something that maximizes our capacity, brings as many students in as possible, and is as easy to understand and follow for the time that we're required to do this. Do you have any idea how many people want to be in person versus all remote? We don't. I mean, I'd say, we have anecdotal evidence of emails to me and emails to other people and conversations of how many want to be in person versus remote. I think that we have no real way to gauge that. I mean, we could put out a survey, but a survey usually doesn't give us the kind of snapshot that we really need. So we don't know that. So in our planning, again, we're continuing to plan for as many students as we can get into the schools while staying in compliance with the guidance of the Department of Health and the State Education Department. So as many students as we can safely get into schools, get them back into schools, and get school reopening. I think one of the things we know for sure, especially at our younger grades, there's nothing that replaces a live teacher in front of our students. So we want to do our best to make that happen. How will you ensure students with special needs don't fall behind if homeschool learning is needed again? Yeah, that's if you go back to my second slide, I think that's one of the most important things we're looking at. Our students with disabilities are key to our return to school plan. They're one of our priorities to ensure that our students with disabilities return to school when we reopen, or if we reopen in the fall. If we have to stay online, again, that's using our special education department, our special education teachers who are phenomenal, and making sure that we have that contact that is required, that is needed, looking at how can we somehow create some in-person opportunities. If we're not allowed to go back full-time, can we create some sort of in-person opportunities for our special education students to interact with their teachers in a safe way? But that is one of the focus, one of the priorities, I should say, of our plan is getting our students with disabilities back into school, back into face-to-face learning with their teachers. Is there going to be continued testing of teachers, students? What is the plan if someone tests positive? That's been asked several times. Now, we're not in charge of testing. We don't do that piece. The Department of Health does that. But so as far as testing teachers, we're not testing. We will be doing temperature checks. We will be asking the required questions of our faculty and staff as when they come to the buildings. So we do, we want people to really be pre-screening themselves before they come in, including students, and parents help us pre-screening. The plan is someone tests positive. That's still not developed. And again, we need guidance from the Department of Health. I'm looking forward to getting that this week. What training will teachers be given for hybrid learning? That's again part of the plan and part of the requirement of the State Education Department is to make sure that we have proper training for our teachers for hybrid learning. We have our resources here that we will use to make sure that we get teachers anything they need around working with hybrid learning. We have experience in it now. I mean, not that it was the kind of experience we thought we would have, but we had experience in the fall. We've looked and taken information from our faculty and staff so we could troubleshoot areas. We've taken information from parents and community members who've had issues with some of the online, tried to use that feedback and that information to create opportunities for professional development and for training for our teachers. So between now and fall, if we are on a hybrid model, or if we are in an all remote model, we will be, continuing to provide that kind of training for them. Our screens just did something strange here. Sorry, we're in a new platform, so let's talk about training. This is what we're doing. So as far as that's concerned, we also look in our calendar for next year. We put 4 days before school even starts for teachers, as superintendent's conference days for our teachers, to be able to bring them back in and have them trained in whatever the plan may be, whatever they see necessary, whatever they think is necessary to get them up to speed and ready to go for September. But we also have all of August where we want to put out optional opportunities for teachers to learn. That's, the key is getting that plan in on the 31st, getting ourselves together, and then having those 30 days to prepare and implement the plan when students arrive or when September comes and school needs to reopen, whether it be virtual or in person. The buses are already crowded. How will you keep kids safe on the bus, and how will they sanitize? Requirements are very clear in the documents around busing, the number of students who can be on a bus, social distancing on the bus, masks required on the bus, and the cleaning of the buses. So that has to be part of our plan. Buses have to be cleaned after every run. We are putting together, a plan to make sure that as soon as students exit a bus at one school, we are cleaning crew comes in and cleans the high touch areas and make sure that it sanitizes the entire bus before it moves on to its next run, which will probably pick up another level of students within the district. So social distancing and masks is going to be required on buses according to the guidance, and training is also cleaning is also required, which we are planning for. Again, that's part of acquiring the proper products for cleaning and making sure that we have everything we need to open, whether it be PPE, cleaning products, disinfectant. Those are all parts of have to be part of our plan, and then have to be part of our implementation and communication with the state and the Department of Health around our ability to do that by acquiring those products. If a hybrid model is used, will the district make sure that siblings are on the same out of school schedule? Yes, that's one of those things that we've been talking about, having siblings in different grade levels at different school buildings, and how can we manage that? That's one of the reasons we're trying to avoid the rotation. We think that could be a problem for many of our parents, having them rotate through that schedule like that. So we are looking to make sure that if two siblings are going to school, that we have them in the same day or the same time, so parents can won't be as inconvenienced through that. And that's one of the things we're really looking at, creating a really positive education environment and an effective education program, but also making sure that we are looking out for our community and our parents who have a lot of needs around this epidemic as well. With the hybrid model, won't there be more exposure? Students will be going to all different types of childcare on their off days or off in the classroom. Contact tracing would be so much harder. What's the plan? How will be that monitored? That's a good question. And again, going back to, we're trying to keep it as simple as possible to bring as many students into the buildings as we possibly can on a regular and full-time basis. And that's really going to, depend on our ability, not our ability, but our inventory of classrooms and how many students we can put in the classroom, how many staff we have to make sure that all classrooms are staffed by highly qualified teachers and teachers assistants. So yeah, the rotational model creates a lot of issues between being confusing, but also creating exactly what you said, that what are students doing on those other days, because parents are still going to work, and those students are then going to be entering another environment. So that is part of our thought process when we look at bringing students back to school and making sure we maximize the number of students we get back into our buildings. Will you be having more Q&A sessions as you learn more, as you learn more and have more plans? Yes. Our next, and I'll announce that at the end, but our next town hall is going to be this Thursday at 4 o'clock. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to be doing this regularly even after we put the plan into the state education department. We'll be doing this at least weekly for the rest of the summer to make sure we continue to hear back from our community and to be able to let our community know where we are in our process and what's going on. So we're going to continue this type of communication from now until school opens and probably beyond, because I think even when we open schools, all the best plans are made, and then everything opens and students come, and we need to take a look and see what did we do that needs to be changed. So we're going to continue to communicate with parents through this model, and hopefully sooner than later we'll be able to do it in person so people can be here and we can have an exchange. But that is definitely the communication of this nature is going to continue throughout this state of emergency, at least until it ends. Are students going to be required to have a negative COVID test before they attend? That is not part of the requirements within the Department of Health guidance or the State Education Department guidance at this time. For the high school, will there be attendance required for virtual classes? Yes. One of the requirements in the State Education Department plan is that we track attendance for all of our students, and that we make sure that we follow up with students who are chronically absent, and then we know where our students are and what they're doing. So one of the things that we worked on during the spring and need to perfect during the summer is that attendance piece, and making sure that we know who's attending, we know how often they're attending, and we know how to follow up for students who are not attending our classes. Sorry, we're sifting through here. So this question says, I'm a single mom of 4. I also have underlying health issues as well. Will I be able to make the decision with my kids who are taught remotely? And where does that leave me as far as work? Would I have to quit and stay home or help teach? That's exactly what we're trying to avoid. That's when I looked at the priorities of how we can, meet the needs of our families and our students. That's exactly what we're trying to avoid, by making sure that we have as many students as possible in our school buildings, and looking at when we talk about going to work, making sure that the youngest students are the students that are really part of our focus here, to make sure our youngest students are in schools. So it's about our inventory of classrooms, getting as many students into the inventory of our resources as far as personnel are concerned, getting as many students as possible into school buildings, so parents can do exactly what you're saying, so parents can go to work and not have to stay home and teach. What plans do you have for teachers and TAs that are immune compromised and feel in-class teaching is risky? Well, again, one of the requirements is if we have teachers or faculty or staff who have a documented history of being immune compromised or have a disability that does not allow them to come to school, we are required to create plans for them. And as I said earlier, we are going to do that. This model, or any model that we put in place, and this fall, is going to need everybody we have. So if we can arrange things for some of our faculty and staff who have a medical condition that keeps them home to help, we're going to do that. Whether it be helping teach classes, helping train for the use of the technology, individual tutoring for students, working with our students with disabilities, whatever we have. So it's going to be an all hands on deck approach come fall. So if we have teachers that need to stay home, and if that's the case, we want them to stay home. We want, again, number one priority, safety. But we do want to find ways for them to contribute to our efforts. Is there any availability to use local big event centers to provide more space for classrooms? These locations might be used and in need of funds. We have not looked at larger areas for a lot of reasons, for a lot of the requirements we have around school buildings and the physical plant, what it needs to be. Sometimes the code for a school district or a school building is much different than the code for some other places. So no, we have not looked at that. We have thought about possibilities of looking at tutoring centers in larger areas. So that's one of the things we're looking at for if we do have to go to a hybrid model, or if we do have to go to all online model, can we provide some small opportunities for tutoring in our local community centers or large venues that are currently not being used. So those are all things that are on the table. How will stakeholder feedback be solicited and incorporated into the plan to reopen? Well, that's kind of what we're doing now. We want to hear your questions and find ways to answer them, and know most of your questions obviously are things that we need to dive into and look and say, hold on, this is a good question. How are we going to make sure that this person's concerns are addressed in our plan? And again, we're going to meet again on Thursday. So continuously looking for stakeholder input on this plan. Even after, I think I want to emphasize this because I think it's important for people to know, even after we submit the plan for the State Education Department, we can make adjustments. So we will continue to engage our community through this model, obviously, until we can do it in person, so we can hear what people's concerns are and have their opinions and their ideas be heard. So it's continuing through this is how we're going to do that. What is the air circulation system at schools? What new steps are being taken to improve ventilation, since it's been proven that the virus is in aerosols? Yeah, I talked a little about this earlier. We have, we've invested a lot in our facilities over the last 8 years. We have up-to-date heating and ventilation systems in every one of our buildings. We do have control of the fresh air exchange that comes into our buildings, and our plan is to, as the Department of Health guidance, to increase that fresh air exchange in our buildings, because we can do that beyond what the regular school year recommendation is. So we are going to continue to look at how we can do that, making sure that we are really exchanging more air than usual as recommended by the Department of Health. How many teachers are retiring and or refusing to return if in-person teaching is chosen? I don't have that number right now. I have not had any communication with any of our teachers who have at this point told me they're not going to come back to school. And I'd say our retirements were pretty much average as they are every year. So I don't think we have a lot of teachers who are retiring from this. I think actually the opposite. A lot of teachers are staying on because they feel the responsibility and they want to be part of what our students need as we move forward in this situation. We need them. They know we need them. So we're glad that our teachers are. We're not hearing a lot of teachers who can't come to work, and we didn't really have a disproportionate number of retirements this year. Is the information on school sports that came out the other day, as far as the schedule of when each sport would happen, set, or is that a recommendation? That is set. The September 21st, I believe it was, or 27th, that is set. We don't have a choice in that matter. Again, we're supposed to be hearing more about that between now and that date as to whether we can have sports at all. But that is set. That's not set by us. That's set by the state. I think it's also worth mentioning, not only with sports, but even with what we're doing now for online learning and our hybrid models and reopening of schools. These are requirements set forth. These aren't local decisions anymore. These are state decisions. We're being directed what to do. We're doing our best to really mold those plans and create those plans in the best way that reflect our students' needs and our community's needs. So many of these things, sports and just reopening school, these are not our decisions. These are not local decisions. They're not decisions made by your Board of Education or by myself. They are made from the state level, and we're being told what we can do, and then we're working within those parameters to do the best we can for everybody in our community. What steps have been taken to ensure equitable access to the internet for all students? That's an excellent question, and one of the requirements we have to see what we can do to make that happen. You know, we only have so much reach as far as the internet is concerned and access to the internet. We were lucky in the spring to be able to come to an agreement with Spectrum, at least locally, to allow Kingston City School District students to have free internet access. That obviously ended in June 30th. So that's, you know, we are looking at what we can do locally is we've increased our, you know, as far as the school district, we increased our hotspot locations to reach into our parking lots and in some cases into our neighborhoods a little bit. We don't have that level of capacity. We can't create internet access throughout the county. I know that our local BOCES is looking at how they can help. I know there is a movement within the city of Kingston to create a public Wi-Fi system. Again, that wouldn't go to people's houses, but that would be, you know, out in the public for people to access. So that's something we're working on. We have to report to the state what we know about that and how we can do that. But you know, that's one of those things that's going to create some, that's going to really require some partnership and some collaboration with organizations that do things, you know, that we don't do, like provide internet service. So that's an excellent question. What steps have been taken to ensure that? Oh, that's the same one. So when are we to expect the information about alternative ways of school operating for those of us who would like to look at supplemental or alternative ways that we can have our children learning? What does the Kingston City School District think is a reasonable amount of time for parents of students to have to wait for this information in order to make our plans? Well, I mean, I think a reasonable plan, I understand that there's concern and people want to make their plans for fall, and we would have liked to make our plans for fall. We got guidance from the state education department last Thursday. So you know, we waited for guidance from the state education department. We don't have choices here. We're doing what we're directed to do. So we are acting as quickly as possible, but we want to be quick, but we don't want to be hasty. This is too important of a process and too important of a decision for us to rush, but we also want to make sure that we do it in a timely fashion for parents to make their plans. Obviously, the plan has to be into the state education department by the 31st of July. We will meet that deadline, and you will know what we're doing by that deadline, if not sooner. How do you plan on having more personal connection with students and their counselors online? I feel mental health of students may even be more important than babysitting, especially in 9 through 12 levels. Yeah, mental health, having a plan for mental health is part of the requirements within the state education department plan that we have to submit. We have to provide the state education department with proof that we will be able to meet the mental health needs, that we do have the staffing as far as our social workers and our counselors, and that we have provided opportunities for interaction with students and their counselors and their social workers and anyone they need as far as their mental health is concerned. So that will be part of our plan submitted to the state, and that'll be part of the plan that we will share with our community. Will the district be getting desks for classes that don't have them to help with social distancing guidelines? Many kindergarten classes have tables. Yes, many elementary buildings just have tables, and that's one of the things that we're looking at our inventory. Is that, you know, there's so many pieces to this puzzle. You know, furniture is a piece, right? So we're looking at where do we have tables? How many students are going to be in those rooms? Can we do it where there is one student per table, or is the table big enough to have 2 students, 1 at each end? Where do we have to replace tables with desks? Do we have those desks? Can we get those desks? Those are all really good questions and things that we're working on. So but at the end of the day, we are required to comply with the requirements of the Department of Health and the State Education Department to ensure social distancing in our classrooms. Every student should have 6 feet in all direction, and every student should be wearing a mask. Those are the things that we're looking at. Whatever the furniture has to look like to make that happen, we're going to have to do that. That will go along. Those are the kind of things that go into the decision-making process of what our school year will look like in the fall. Will in-school PTE events and field trips be canceled for the fall semester? At this point, I'm going to say yes. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to change in September if and when we open buildings. Live events, guest speakers, classroom helpers, field trips, visitors to the building in general. It's going to be very different. You know, we always like to have our schools be open places and welcome guests and presenters and parents, but right now, looking at the guidance we have and understanding how we have to operate school in September under that guidance, those are things that are going to have to wait until we pass this state of emergency. If a teacher is out sick, will it be safe for the children or substitute who goes between schools to fill in for the other teacher? Would a substitute want to fill in? Oh, those are good questions. I mean, those are questions about our capacity for our substitutes, our capacity for our teachers. How many do we have? Can we you know, provide those teachers in front of students if we do have teachers who are sick? And how does that look? But yes, I mean, those are all considerations what we're looking at. You know, there's no easy answer to that question. If a teacher is out sick and a substitute needs to be in front of them, finding, you know, making sure, doing our health checks with the substitute, asking the questions we need to ask, taking temperatures every day to make sure that people aren't coming into the school sick is an important piece. And that goes for teachers, like I said before, teachers, students, substitutes, before people enter the building, you know, knowing that they are not coming in with a temperature, they're not coming in when they don't feel well. That's how we're going to try to, you know, make sure that we keep everyone safe by making sure people who are not feeling well don't come into our buildings. Do the students have to wear an N95 mask or just cloth one? We asked that question in the State Education Department, and we really gave pretty much the Department of Health. The answer is a cloth mask is appropriate and is sufficient. We're gonna follow that up, though. You know, we are really hoping for some really specific help from the Department of Health that will tell us exactly the kind of things. But as of right now, we've been informed that a cloth mask is fine, and that we would have, for students who don't have a cloth mask, that we would be providing you know, paper masks for students who enter the school buildings, and then that would meet the guidance, the compliance part of the guidance of the State Education Department and Department of Health. Will the start date for school be the same as other years? As of this moment, yes. We may have to change our calendar throughout the school year. That may be something that happens. You've seen a lot of you know, universities change their schedule when they bring students in and how long certain breaks will be. A lot of that will depend on the COVID-19 virus in Ulster County. But as of this moment, we are going to start the calendar that you have now and that's on our website is our school calendar for next year. What would be the procedure if a teacher thinks a student has symptoms of COVID-19? How will we stop parents from sending their kids to school sick? Well, we will have procedures in place with our nurses in our buildings as to how our teachers or anyone can indicate to a nurse that they think there is a possibility a student isn't well. We're required to have locations for students who we suspect may have COVID-19, so make sure we can isolate them from the rest of the population while we communicate with parents and ascertain their condition. So how will we stop parents from sending their kids to school sick? That's a difficult one. You know, we're really asking for cooperation from parents. check your student, before you put them on the bus. Are they feeling well? Do they have a temperature? If your student has a temperature, please don't give them Tylenol or Advil to reduce that temperature, so when they come into school, it doesn't indicate when we do our temperature checks. These are things that are going to be put into policy and procedure as we open buildings. We just need to make sure that we really need to ask the parents to help us keep everyone safe. If your student doesn't feel well, please don't send them to school. I know that's a burden on parents, but it's a bigger burden if we have an outbreak in one of our schools because a student came to school who was positive for COVID-19. How in situations where mask wearing in school is not possible, lunch, snacks, time be managed? Again, that's our social distancing. A lot of what you hear is wear a mask if you can't social distance. We're saying wear a mask and social distance. There are certain places where you can't wear a mask like in lunch. Again, we're going to set up our feeding times in our cafeterias or our classrooms, wherever our students are going to be eating, in a way that they can take off their mask, but they're going to be safe because they're in a social distance situation. If a student needs to stay home, will all students be provided with MacBooks who will be providing training? So if students need to stay home, we don't use MacBooks, we use Chromebooks. So we don't use Apple products, we use Microsoft products, but I understand that's still the same as your question. What we're working up to is our capacity around having a one-to-one environment where every student has a device. We don't have that right now. We have the capability for maybe close to half of our students to have a Chromebook if they need it. We'll be providing that technology, and again, our job is to provide the training. Our best way to provide training for parents and students is going to be through online in this situation. So which we did in the spring and will continue to do in the fall if it's necessary. I did have some of our principals and teachers went out in a socially distanced manner to help parents, on the front porch, who were struggling to get the machine to work. Again, focusing on our younger students is one of the things that we look at when we look at our technology as far as bringing students back. Our older students are really more adept with technology and more able to move forward using that type of model. So it's one of the factors that we're looking at as we put together our reopening plan. Will a survey be sent out to parents to gain parent feedback on what they are capable of managing regarding their children's education? Additionally, other feedback could be given on who is planning on driving kids to school, who will be able to do online learning, and what can we make online learning more manageable. Yeah, I think that we have so much feedback from the spring around how to make online learning more manageable. We've compiled so much different data around that. Surveying parents around transportation. We did consider surveying parents around transportation, but what we decided to do instead was put our plan together and then make the assumption that everyone is taking the buses. If they are, great. If they're not, okay, I'd much rather be over-prepared than under-prepared for transportation. So, as far as, so we really ain't going to plan a survey, because then also things change for people. They may think they don't need transportation and tell us that. We make our arrangements around that, and then all of a sudden something happens. It changes at work. It's different family dynamic changes where all of a sudden transportation is needed, and we've scaled back our transportation and don't have the capacity to provide that. So we will be, whatever our plan is, whatever this number of students coming back into our buildings is going to be in September, we are going to plan transportation for every one of those students who's eligible for transportation, and we can scale back from there. Again, I'd rather be over-prepared in the beginning and be able to scale back than be under-prepared and not be able to transport your students to school. Okay, we're going to take one more question. How will students be graded and held accountable for their schoolwork? When the district announced the compassionate grading, many students stopped doing work and were not being able to be monitored at home. Learning basically stopped for many students. Yeah, I think that's one of the conversations we're having, and one of the requirements is we do have to have a grading requirement. We do have to grade our students. We were putting together a model that doesn't, reflects pretty much how we are already doing grading if we are an in-person school. So if we're doing online learning, this fall will not be like the spring. We will be requiring grading. There will be, accountability, and our teachers, we're going to work with our teachers to make sure we're putting something in place that they can manage. And yeah, grades are going to happen. They're required in the state education department plan, and really they're required for, our school district to continue to move forward and make sure our students are making the progress that they need to make. Okay, we're going to end there, and just so everyone knows, I want to repeat a few things. This meeting will be posted on the Kingston City School District YouTube channel and website if you need to refer back. We're compiling all the questions in a Q&A document that will be posted later this week. Our next town hall meeting will be held on Thursday, July 23rd at 4 p.m. The live link to join the meeting is available already on our website, so you can just get ready to be able to click that on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Thursday at 4 o'clock. And I want to thank all of you for participating today. It's very important that we continue this conversation and I continue to get your questions, and I continue to do my best to answer them. And I appreciate your time, and be well.